Welcome to another pre-show, everyone. Gather round.
Gather round indeed. It is autumn. I mean, autumn is springy. It's cool. It's misty. The leaves are just starting to turn from green to other things. Man, I love autumn. Isn't autumn great?
Autumn's the best.
What's it like right now where you are?
It's same as it ever was.
Hot?
Hot, dry, but temperate. A little bit temperate. 80 degrees. Um,
See, autumn doesn't really come to LA until about Halloween.
hmm.
I think
I would
that's
agree
fair to
with that.
say.
Like everything's later. Like we're on a later schedule. Um, you
Yeah,
know, like our September is
it's
really hot. Really, really hot still.
yeah. September is often. I mean, as long as I've been around, in California, and that's since '66. Uh, as long as I've been around in SoCal, September has often been the hottest month. And I can remember sixth grade, I guess, fifth or sixth grade. Um, See, in those days, we didn't have air conditioners in the schools. Now, you can imagine how some of these days were. And I guess it would have been probably September of '71. It was so hot we ended up out of school for a week
Wow.
because it was a heat emergency, and and see, the other thing too was that back in those days, um, the smog was much worse than it is now, and when it would get very hot, the inversion layer would lock the smog in. So you had you know you were you were gassed and heated. It was kind of like concentration light. It was really bad, and I can remember on days like that, you'd be miserably hot, and your eyes would be hurting, and I would get headaches, from the
Yeah.
smog.
Yeah.
So as you know, I'm the king of nostalgia in most things, but I do not miss the air quality of LA in my childhood, not one little bit.
Yeah. Huh.
And
Okay.
apart from that, there's a lot of stuff going on in this old world of ours.
That's right. That's
And
right.
today is a very special day. There are two important church holidays on this day and two important American civil holidays. In real time, ladies and gentlemen, we're doing this on Saturday, the 17th of September. So you're going to hear about what you're missing out on, really.
What, Law Day, uh, Constitution Day? And
Yes,
are you
those are the
serious?
two
I totally
civil.
guessed.
You got it. Today is Constitution Day and it's Law Day.
That was a shot in the dark. I just thought of these.
It's a shot in the dark that hit the target.
Wow.
Isn't that neat?
So, what are you doing to celebrate the Constitution?
Morning, Queen Elizabeth. I know. I actually went to the great Abbey of Heiligenkreuz today to see my friends, the Bogles, who come over from England to see other friends of theirs as well, and we had a very pleasant day. Um, let's see, to celebrate. Well, the two saints' days today, the two church holidays, are actually even more important than either the Constitution or the civil law, given that the law nevertheless predates the Constitution and is sometimes at loggerheads with it. Because the law, goes back to England and the king and the Anglo-Saxons and people like that, whereas the Constitution goes back to Philadelphia. But the two church days are the feasts of the Stigmata of St. Francis. He was the first recorded stigmatic in history.
Yeah. No.
And the second is St. Hildegard of Bingen, who was recently made a church fatherette, a church doctorate, rather, and was an amazing lady altogether.
I'm not familiar with her writings. I've heard of her. That's interesting.
Yeah, well, she wrote a lot and about a lot of things. The Catholic feminists have tried to annex her But the only way you can do that is if you don't read what she wrote.
Yeah.
I mean, the basic idea that a lot of feminists have is that any Catholic woman of the Middle Ages who could write was a lesbian, and thus one of us. Do you think that's oversimplifying?
No.
All right, well, we
Uh,
solve that issue. If it is oversimplifying, I will say it's no worse than what our opponents do. And if you don't like having your views oversimplified, you shouldn't do that to other people. That's what I say. But wait, there's more.
Ooh, goody.
I thought you'd be happy about that. Because today is the last of the 3 Michaelmastide Ember Days. Remember. Well, you get the idea. There are, of course, 4 sets of Ember Days, one for each of the seasons, in which traditionally Catholics would fast and do penance for the ordination of priests, because they used to be ordained primarily on the 4 Saturdays of the Ember Days, and prayers for the crops and all that of their particular season. So Michaelmas Embertide, you were basically praying for the harvest. And of course, we're entering into the harvest tide. You know, the idea of drawing everything in, the loading up the grain and the vegetables and the fruits, and storing them up for winter, getting ready to slaughter the hogs and the other animal slaughter and salt down to celebrate through winter's cold, dark, snowy beauty, celebrate the feasts of Christmas and Candlemas and so forth. We're getting back to the earth, back to the land.
Absolutely. Okay.
Well, I don't know. It sounded good. Living by the wheel of the year, doing the whole liturgical year thing. Farm to market kind of eating, farm to table, seasonal eating, slow food movement.
You're just
Shop
saying
local Saturday.
you're merging things that I was giving you a free pass. Like, okay, yeah, just all these things. They're good. Yeah.
Yeah, just pull them all together. Pull them all together. Let's all do it. Let's have the nuke localism. If you're living in the country, ladies and gentlemen, go back to the land. If you're in the city, well, then the new urbanism, the new colonization. Do what you're doing where you're doing it.
I've never heard this from you before. Do what you do.
Well, it's kind of like Kamala Harris does. Do what you do when and where you're doing it.
Well, that's true.
That's an admonition we can all get behind.
It's actually not too far from the mainstream thing. You do you.
Yeah, exactly. Live it, or as we used to say many, many years ago, let the now happen. Live in the moment. Let your freak flag fly.
Yeah. All right, move your camera so that is correct.
Oh, but like I like being sort of
it looks like you're super
out.
short. Okay, there we go.
No, I think that we all need a certain place within each of us. I mean, a safe space, not to say a playroom, within each of our heads, where we're free to be who or whatever it is we are. You need to be authentic, okay? You're looking vaguely pained.
Well, we were just actually talking about this because it's just such meaningless language. My wife and I were talking about actually people misusing I think it's Catherine of Siena. Be who you were born to be, and you'll set the world on fire, or something like that. Be who you are. It's one of those like that. You know what I mean? Well, but who are you? You know.
Ah,
So, but it's licensed to be. Like go hog wild. Honestly.
just accept yourself and let it roll. Or again, as we used to say in the 60s, let it all hang out.
I like that one. I'm very partial to that.
Yeah, you wouldn't if you were built like me.
Well, that's what I think of it. Just let it all hang out. It's just like I don't know.
Believe me, it's not a pretty sight. There's a reason God made corsets. I'll just say that. No. Sad day it was, son. I learned all about letting it hang out in the 60s. That wasn't a good idea. I mean, one of the things you always see in LA in the summer is people letting it all hang out when they really need to shut it all up.
That is for sure. That has hit me especially hard since being married and going to the market and doing my own shopping all the time now. Well, actually during COVID too. But yeah.
Well, it's a twofer really, because on the one hand, all these gorgeous chicks who get me so angry because they're exposing so much, but they are outnumbered by chicks that really need to hide, and men too. I mean, need to, less is more. Moo-moos are good.
I don't see a lot of moo-moos.
No, I'm saying you should.
Oh.
Trust me, if a girl does not look good in a bikini or something like that, I mean, she shouldn't wear it. She should wear something more flattering.
Well, it's weird. I always am walking in Sierra Madre, which is like hippie heaven, kind of. So it's like you have all
It
these.
really is.
These
I love Sierra Madre.
Yeah, so it's beautiful. You have all these old, like super hardcore hippies, and I'm always walking. I'm always doing my neighborhood walk, and I'll see someone from afar. It's like, oh, it's a young person. It's a young, athletic woman, and then you see up close, and it's like, oh, you're 65.
Yes. And you haven't caught on yet.
And every time this has happened to me probably a dozen or so times, and every time it happens, I hear your voice in my head saying, this is the generation that grew old without growing up.
Oh, it's true.
Because it's like you're wearing something that like some yoga person from a 20-year-old would wear or something, like, but you're 65. No. You're not 25 anymore.
No, you're not. That you're. Feel free to cover up. Don't let me stop you.
Oh man. All right. Let's start the questions, right? I feel like we've got the Charles rambling intro down. We've
was that a rambling intro? I thought it was kind of concise and to the point.
Well, I feel like on your spectrum it was actually pretty tame, but I think we covered a lot of different things.
My spectrum.
Yeah, your spectrum.
My spectrum.
Yeah.
Oh, so now there's a Coulombe spectrum.
I feel like there is, honestly.
What from semi-coherent to out of the galaxy?
Just out of the galaxy, just going from like the Battle of Los Angeles to aliens to that blonde on the poster boards over here to Harry Truman to Jacobitism.
To what?
Jacobitism.
Yeah. What's about Jacobitism? Do you think Angelina's a Jacobite? I don't think so. I don't think Angelina's a Jacobite. Why would you say that? Are you trying to get her into trouble?
Do you think she's a Neoplatonist?
Who, Angeline?
Yeah.
Well, it's funny you say that, because Angeline, now this is true. Angeline was interviewed and she was asked, true story, she was asked, what is your religion? Do you have any faith? And she said, well, true story. Well, I make up fairies and angels that I believe in. I make them up, and I pray to them. What? It's what she said. She makes up fairies and angels, and she believes in them and prays to them. You are looking very confused.
Well, I'm wondering because on a certain level, like a big part of my gut reaction is
Of course you
respect.
do.
Respect. You know?
Yes, of course you do. I'm sure.
Like
That was my reaction.
If you're gonna say that, I don't know, but I don't know if it's like because it's like, well, at least she's honest,
Yeah.
and she's not strictly speaking a materialist, although she insists they're made up.
I would hesitate not to call Angelina materialist. I mean, you know, you should probably run it might be copywritten, but you should see if you can pull something up from the internet and run it on Memes and Productions so people can see her if they don't know her. Angeline, she is all they say.
It's probably copywritten because that's all she has. That's all people know is these things.
Yeah, would that be fair use though? And would she be happy that we were sort of advertising for her, shilling for her, as some of our nastier critics say? Well, that would be something. That would be something. The boys are shilling for Angeline. Now there, there we got something, pal. Tumblr House hits a new low. Shilling for Angeline.
All right.
You know, she's not a bad-looking woman. What's that, Chief?
Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't go there. Don't do that.
The sweetheart of the good old 408th precinct.
Okay.
Couldn't you see Angeline tossing him back with Chief Clancy in the first cabin?
Okay.
Oh, the portals of the next galaxy are opening.
I'm trying, good patrons. I'm trying to bring it in here.
Let me tell you something. If Angeline had been present at the Battle of Los Angeles, we wouldn't have just won. We'd have pursued those sticky aliens back to their planet and smacked them around. Admiral Angeline leads the fleet. Couldn't you see her like an Andrews sister, dressed in a sort of uniform during the Battle of Los Angeles? Would that be something? Doing a cover of Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy of Company B while the flying saucers are overhead, and our brave boys like Tillard Chardin and Rana are firing away. Praise the Lord and pass the ammunition. As I say, sometimes it pays to chew through the straps in the morning.
Okay.
Are we feeling better?
Somehow I was tempted to go on tangents and steer you in other directions, but for the good of the patrons' sanity, I'm gonna leave it there.
Answer this question honestly. What has sanity ever done for you? Exactly. No answer there, smart guy. It's restricted you. It's tied you down. If sanity was so big, if sanity was so great, our masters would have some. Got you there, smart guy.
You got me
there.
What
the Holy Father said today.
What? What did you say?
You know what the Holy Father said
today?
I
thought you said the Holy Father said that today.
No. Well, that may be next.
What?
No. He said you can't call China a totalitarian regime.
Why not?
Well, it's more complex than that. Even though he said they're going to be putting Cardinals Head on trial or something. I'll tell you what, I'm going to know what to say. Just wish he didn't say it.
All right. Time for the questions.
Oh, is that it? All right.
Nothing to see here.
Move along.
I wish I didn't have to do this for the Holy Father, but nothing to see
there are
here.
elves creeping into that doorway. Nah, there's nothing there. Move along. Move along. No.
All right.
No aliens here. Move along.
All right. So Daniel says, "What is the best biography of Saint Louis the Ninth, King of France?"
To this day, it remains that written by the Sieur de Joinville, Joinville, who knew him. He was a contemporary of him and a chronicler, Jean de Joinville, and really still the best and available in Anglais. That's a language spoken by people who, don't speak Francais. It's called Anglais.
Got it. Yeah, Anglais. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anglais for dummies.
Anglais for dummies.
Like
Anglais. It would be Anglais pour les dummies.
Okay. Let's see. William has a question on Prince Henry Frederick. He says, "Please tell us about the older brother of Charles I and your opinion on him. What were his values and beliefs? How would British history in the Stuart dynasty change if he ruled? How did Charles I end up having different beliefs from his older brother?"
Well, his older brother, such a star as Harry, was everything that Charles was not as a young man. He was athletic. He was very good looking. He was very Protestant from his dad. He was very much more influenced by his father than Charles was. And the reason for that isn't hard to see. He was the heir to the throne, and James spent a lot of time with Harry, much more so than he did with Charles at that time. The old joke in these things, the heir and the spare. Well, Charles was very much the spare. So he spent a lot more time with his Catholic mother, Anne of Denmark. So, as things happened, Harry died of I forget why he died, but he did. And so Charles rather unexpectedly became the heir to the throne. But by that time, his views had pretty much congealed, and he was the almost sort of kind of quasi-Catholic that we know and to a great degree revere. If Harry had been king, it's hard to say. I mean, would he have been able to compromise with the Puritans over things like getting rid of bishops? I don't know. But if he could have, they might have escaped the Civil War on the one hand, but on the other hand, England would be a much more Calvinist place than it became.
All right. Mason says, "What is Charles's opinion on Blas Pinar and the Bunker faction during the Spanish transition? From what I can tell, Pinar was devout, but is his model a good one for Catholics?"
Well, that's a great debate. For those who don't know, in 1975, Franco died. Now, obviously, Franco was keen on his regime surviving him. Juan Carlos, the king, who succeeded to the throne and succeeded Franco, had kind of assured the old man that he would keep up things as they had been. But as soon as Franco was dead, he began bringing Spain into accord with the rest of Europe, quote unquote, democratizing. Now, this was resisted by a lot of people, and one of these was Blas Pinar, who had had a major role at different times in Franco's government and was a real phalangist. See, Franco's coalition that won the Spanish Civil War was made up of several very diverse groups. I mean, they're diverse within certain limits. They were all Catholic. But The Carlists, of course, supported the older line of the King of Spain and a very traditional version of Catholic monarchy. The Alfonsinos supported a liberal version of Catholic monarchy, but their view was that of Alfonso XIII. It wasn't quite as liberal as the Spanish monarchy would become. Then there was the Phalange, who they weren't fascist, the way people like to say, but they were certainly authoritarian and veered in that direction. And Blas Pinar was one of these. Personally, I hold the Carlist position as the best, but any of them were better than what would have happened if the Reds had won, or than what's happened since 1975.
All right. Question from Nicholas, who says, do you have any book recommendations on the idea of the empire going from Mesopotamia through World War I?
Not as such, I don't really. But The Holy Roman Empire by Viscount Bryce, Brycee, Viscount is spelled Viscount, is available online. And it does explain a lot about the theory of empire. Interestingly enough, what's also online and kind of useful is the 1911 Encyclopedia Britannica's article on empire, which you can easily look up, and it's quite good, and will give you a lot of references.
All right. Bronislav says, good day, Vincent and Charles. First of all, thank you very much to Charles for agreeing to be on Slovak television on Dokriza. Many times I think about the quote I learned from your book of Blessed Charles, that he is suffering so much that his people might come back together. Now, 100 years after his death, I wondered how this would play out. Maybe it will not be radical coming back together under Viribus Unitas, but there is so much talk about monarchy nowadays in the media, at least in those that I read, which would be almost unthinkable 2 years ago, even though in the talk shows it was said that it is minimal. I would still argue, though, that it is growing in example, article about Gott Erhalt, Gott beschützt, or about Archduke Karl. He was in Bratislava, and there was also an interview with him. Of course, I see the connection. Please comment. Could also the death of the Queen be providential in our lands?
Well, yeah, I believe so, because it is forcing people to look again at things we've forgotten. And certainly in Central Europe, Central Europe reuniting in the old Austria-Hungary will not happen. But what certainly could happen is a monarchical federation with the head of the House of Habsburg as Emperor of Austria, King of Hungary, King of Czechia, King of Slovenia, King of Croatia, and with these countries being exercising a great deal of subsidiarity, with the monarch being sufficiently having authority and having sufficient power to, as Franz Josef put it, protect his people from their politicians, which is the biggest thing that lacks in constitutional monarchies today, is that the monarch does not have the power to protect his people from their politicians. I do believe it's quite possible that the death of the Queen was providential in this sense, not only because it has shocked and horrified the establishment in seeing thousands and thousands of British brave hours in queues to go past the Queen's body for a few minutes. I mean, I know someone who started at 7 o'clock this morning, and he only got through at 7 p.m. No, not 7 p.m. It was 5 p.m. So that's a long wait. You
Yeah,
know,
like how do you navigate that? Like, is there restroom facilities? Are you eating? Like, you've got
no,
to plan out like essential life activities, you know?
well, you do, but there's no easy way to do it.
Yeah.
But people are doing it in their thousands. And again, this is upsetting and annoying the people who like to be annoyed and upset because they're worthless little scumbags. Oh, just awful. How can people waste their time? Well, because you don't know anything and you're an idiot. But uh, monarchy speaks to something deep within us. We may not like to admit that. We may like to prance around and pretend otherwise. But Christ is King of Kings, not President of Presidents or CEO of CEOs. Um, and monarchy is written in our DNA, both psychological and cultural. Um, I've often said in recent weeks, and I'll say it here: the two biggest lacks in society today are fatherhood and leadership, and yet they're really the same thing. Fathers should be leaders, leaders should be fathers, and this is never more obvious than with monarchy. Um, the king is the father, or the queen, the mother of her country. And the queen touched the lives of millions of people who never met her because she couldn't be bought like a politician. She had to subject her life to the needs and desires of her subjects or to what she saw to be their benefit. It, it is a very thankless role. And of course, the people who are bred for it, they're stuck in a very difficult position. But it's one that if they believe they're called to it by God, they're chosen by God, and they don't really have a choice except to ride it out to the best of their ability. One of the problems you have with a lot of is quote unquote unemployed nobility, as they say, unemployed royalty rather, is the very fact that they live in a world that tells them everything that their fathers believed was garbage. And sometimes it's easy to believe that. But when you look at what's going on in England right now, you realize the truth. And the truth is that a good king is better than the best of presidents, while the worst of presidents is far worse than the worst of kings. Henry VIII could never compete with Hitler or Stalin. Just not possible. And if you say, well, it's because of technology, all right. Cromwell was far worse than Henry VIII. No question about it. Henry VIII had to pretend somehow or other to go along by the law, even if he flubbed a good deal. Not Cromwell, who ripped the law up, did what he wanted. Kind of like, oh, I don't know, our Supreme Court. Only in ways that even Cromwell wouldn't do, because Cromwell was restrained to a very slight degree by his idea of what Christianity was. That's not a problem for Republican leaders. If they feel they've got the political capital to do it, they'll do whatever they want to. And if you don't like it, you'll be sorry. So I really think that there is something in the air. I really think one way or another, Central Europe will come together again. That Charles's not only that Charles's sacrifice will not have been in vain, but the growth of his cultus in Central Europe will doubtless be a part of bringing it back together. I mean, this was a man who did something that other lesser men would find impossible. He loved all of his endlessly warring peoples equally. He loved the Poles and the Ukrainians. He loved the Hungarians and the Slovaks and the Romanians in Transylvania and the Serbians in Banat and the Italians in Trentino and Trieste and the Czechs. He loved them all. They hated each other, but he loved them all. And that is exactly what Central Europe needs in every sense. Religious, cultural, and yes, political. So to turn on the one hand to the intercession and prayers of the great Blessed Charles, especially at this time when Central Europe is stuck between the hammer of Soros and the anvil of Putin, is a wise thing. And for them to look to the members of the imperial house for guidance, for leadership of some kind, would not be unwise. How the members of the house deal with it, of course, is something they're going to have to figure out. But the need for them is certainly there.
I'm gonna steer this in. One of the things. I mean, you talk about the Queen's popularity, and you know what is always in the back of my mind ever since you said it. And I guess maybe one of the first or second seasons is just this concept of when you ban certain types of thoughts, you get people into it, into those banned thoughts in ways you've never even imagined. The people throw themselves into it,
Yep.
and I can't help but feel that way. I feel like history played out over the past 6 years has vindicated your words. The reaction against wokery. Because there's something empty there, honestly, and monarchy fills that. But I guess the wokery, it just creates this void there, and everybody's so empty. And yeah, everything's bad and terrible, and that's how it is. History has always
Okay.
been horrible and terrible. People couldn't self-actualize until now. Uh, you know, and the same is true with Pope Francis. I feel like, I mean, the thing he did with the Latin Mass last Christmas, like, well, he hasn't garnered a great reputation for himself. So people who he's rubbed the wrong way emotionally are gonna be like, "Whoa, okay, I normally wasn't indifferent to the Latin Mass. Really haven't investigated, but now that he banned this, let me
What's the
investigate a little
deal?
bit. Let me investigate this a little bit. You see,
Yeah.
and I tell you, in my personal life, when it comes to providential happenings, I can quite definitively say that God's providence was able to play out only with people making incredibly, unbelievably stupid mistakes, unthinkable mistakes,
Yeah.
which put goods in my lap, which put unthinkable. And so too, I feel like is the case with these bigger things, where perhaps God's will is certain people not doing certain things, and then that pushes history in a certain direction. Because I guess part of it, I say this is too, because like you think to the 90s, right? When I'm a kid, 80s and 90s, you didn't have this sort of virulent like ideology in the same weaponized way.
No.
And at the same time, the pro-monarchy, these sort of attitudes, that traditionalism was also fairly dormant.
Well, that's because, I mean, remember one important thing. That is that, as a rule, people do not question the systems they're under so long as they're successful, as long as they function.
Yeah.
As long as they're delivering the bacon, it's fine. So politically speaking, and I'll speak about the United States, of course, but it would apply to Central Europe or France or Latin America, anywhere else you like, differently, but similarly. Um, our Republican system in the United States did, for a lot of reasons and in many ways, deliver the bacon. And it provided a focus of loyalty above the person, above the self. We had the American civic religion. We all worship the flag and all that. And it Constitution Day and Law Day sort of sum up that faith. And it, in a lot of ways, it worked. It delivered. And so the older thing, the monarchy that it replaced, wasn't even a question. Why would it be? The thing was working. Now, mind you, certain strange people might question all sorts of arcane issues of the past, but in the here and now, things were pretty much working. It might not be perfect, it might not make sense, but it worked. Similarly, in the church, with John Paul II, and then especially with Benedict, we had reached a certain kind of stasis where more and more tradition was being allowed to coexist with the new stuff, and people were allowed to mix and match and choose as they liked. The tradition was getting stronger and stronger, and of course, it got a real boost with Summorum Pontificum, without a doubt. But it had been doing that anyway. It was just going in that direction, and it was a very pleasant middle state. Summorum Pontificum itself was a very clever way of, on the one hand, addressing the terrible injustice of banning the Tridentine Mass, the illegality of banning it, without upsetting the apple cart by punishing the malefactors, who, if they were smart, would have just shut up and let things progress. But remember what you said about things being so stupid.
Yeah.
Well, the anti-tradition tirade that's on right now is, as you quite successfully point out, the ecclesiastical equivalent of wokery in the political and cultural spheres. And it has the same result. It's stupid. It's like somebody's sitting on a branch and sawing off what he's sitting on. It goes nowhere, does nothing. And what's your alternative? Okay, you're right. Everything is awful. I'm awful. We're awful. So what do you got? What do you got as an alternative? Well, they don't. They've got big flapping mouths like this. But there's blah 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 blah. But there's nothing there. Now, Catholic tradition on the one hand, and yes, I'll say it, monarchy on the other, Christian monarchy, are infinitely creative. They have produced all sorts of things. You look, just to take one example, you look at the UNESCO's World Heritage List. Look at the enormous number of things on that list that were built either by monarchs or by the church. Now, the vast majority of what isn't, natural, neither king nor priest made the Grand Canyon. That's true. But you look at the build heritage of the world, you take away the monarchy and the church, and there's very little. And that even in our country, that's actually true. Think of the California missions, which are both. The missions would not have been built without the king, and they wouldn't have been built without the church. Think of Colonial Williamsburg. Think of Plymouth Plantation. Those things would not have been built without their respective kings, and for that matter, their varieties of Christianity. So, we've kind of fooled ourselves for a long time. We were living in a nice middle, I hate to say this, bourgeois middle class thing. Everything was
Oh.
nice. Everything was good. It was, Halloween and Christmas, 1964. It was great. It was neat. It was wonderful. But what these things have done is blown us out of that happy mid region and dumped us on the other side. And what makes it so annoying is that it makes perfect sense ideologically, because these things of their own internal logic are destructive and cannot create and will not create. But humanly speaking, you can't help but wonder, how stupid. You had what you wanted. You were going along, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. You had to screw it up. Hard. Very hard. Harsh is my mellow, man.
All right.
I don't like it when my mellow is harsh, because, it's just, because, yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Totally, bro.
For sure.
All right. That's going to do it for the pre-show.
That's it?
That was a lot. I feel like that was very substantial, Charles. Be nice to yourself. Be a friend to yourself. You did a great job.
Oh, daily affirmation with Vinny Frattini. Woohoo! Man, I feel empowered. I feel affirmed and celebrated. This is a red letter day.
That actually literally has never happened before.
No, it hasn't. Ladies and gentlemen, you mark this down in your calendars. This is great stuff. My constantly nudging boss has affirmed and celebrated me. You really have said, you be you. That's what you just told me.
That's what I get for being contrarian. I fell into this trap.
Your own trap. And you said it for yourself. I had nothing to do with it. All I can do is watch from the other shore and say, oh dear. How sad. The boss is falling into a trap of his own making. Should I say anything? See, this is what comes of being giggling cucks. This kind of thing happens to us.
All right. So that'll do it for the pre-show, everyone. But stay tuned. Full episode coming next.
Do. And if you live in an area that really has autumn, unlike, I don't know, Arcadia, California, luxuriate in it.